Welcome back, listener. How are you doing tonight? How are you doing this evening? I am glad you're doing well, and I'm glad you had a good week. Welcome back to Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we talk about critical issues in the blindness community. By the way, everything you will hear this evening is my opinion, and by the way, copywritten by Aaron Richmond and Aaron's Opinion. Thank you. Aaron's Opinion can be heard almost anywhere you get a podcast, from Apple to Spotify to Spreaker. You name it, we're probably there. Also, by the way, follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter too. This episode will be tweeted out. Hey, by the way, everybody, there's been a lot of positive interactions that I've been having on Twitter, and you know who you are out there. Two of you, two of my most recent guests, one of whom is from somewhere in Europe, the other is from somewhere in North America. You both have been really kind to me, and you guys have been great on Twitter. Thank you. You know who you are. Well, never mind about those two. How about let's talk to Anastasia Danielle? She's blind, like so many of us around the world, and she's had a lot of interesting experiences in the kitchen. Now, you at home are remembering, wait a minute, Aaron, you just did this. And just a couple weeks ago, you and Stuart Salek did an episode. We did. Well, I wanted to give Anastasia the chance to come onto my channel so that she can talk about all the great experiences she's had in the kitchen. And she also really likes to bake. Hi, Anastasia. How are you?
I'm great, Aaron. How are you doing?
Fine, doing well, hanging in there. Let's get into this. So how did you get into the kitchen in the first place? Go ahead.
Well, I started to get really, really, really hungry. So I've been living with blindness for a little over 10 years now.
Now good. Okay, now by the way, so as I said, 30 seconds ago, I just said hi to you. Hi, my name's Aaron Richmond. I forget if I've told you because, as I just said, I talk to so many people. I talk to so many guests for this podcast. It's all what I do and don't say. I forget everything I do and don't say. So if I'm repeating myself, sorry, you're going to hear me repeat myself. But I was born blind with glaucoma, and I've spoken to a lot of people around the world who have become blind later on in life. And it must be really difficult on one hand. On the other, I cannot understand that. Philosophically, I cannot understand what it must be like to go blind later on in life. Why don't you back it up a little bit and tell us how you lost your vision, because you just gave the impression that you were born sighted and then lost your vision later. If you want, go ahead and tell us.
Yes, I was born fully sighted, and I remained fully sighted until I would say 14, 15, 16, that range. I have Stargardt's disease, which is a rare form of macular degeneration. And what that does is it affects your central vision, which is the part of the eye that's responsible for focus and clarity. So I noticed one day, and it was ninth grade. I had just gotten into high school. I had just gotten into high school, yes.
Let me take a wild guess. I don't want to become blind the first year of high school. This sounds horrible. Sounds like the worst time to have this happen. Yeah.
It was traumatic. But I noticed that I was having a hard time seeing the board. So I started sitting in the front of the class in all of my classes pretty much, and I noticed that I wouldn't look at the board anyway, even though I was sitting right in the front. I would just listen and write down all my notes. And I didn't really think about it too much because the vision loss was actually very, very, very slow. So what ended up happening was I gradually adapted to not being able to see. And because it was so slow, I didn't notice. I just thought it was normal. So
that's bizarre. I mean,
yeah.
well, for one thing, from the bottom of my heart, on one hand, I'm sorry. On the other, as you have probably discovered, this is life when you're blind. For some reason, these things happen. The other thing, and listener, when you're playing this episode, you're going to say, Aaron, you're repeating yourself a lot tonight, because I know I've asked this question to another guest. So because I can't really describe what I see, Anastasia,
Okay.
it's really hard for me to conceptualize this, to
Mm-hmm.
understand this. So is it like, can you even try to describe it to me? Is it like you're sitting there and like slowly, like the vision kind of dissipates or just becomes less present? Like, how would you even describe it? Is there any way to express it really? This
There's
loss of vision?
uh, there's really, I mean, I can explain it now, but as it was happening, I just didn't know. Um, because it was so slow, I was like, oh, this is what people must see, you know? It's very it's hard to explain. It's so hard to explain. But to explain my vision now, it would be like putting on a pair of goggles and then wrapping the goggles like 100 times in saran wrap and then smearing Vaseline all over the goggles. Is just extremely blurry. I still have peripheral vision, and not a lot of people know this, but peripheral vision is not sharp or clear. It's mainly used to detect movement. So I still have that, but everything's very blurry.
Huh. Okay. So then what happened? So this vision did this weird thing, and then what?
Um, well, I was going to a Catholic school at the time, and we had to get, like a routine eye check at school. So I went into the nurse's office, and she had told me that I had to go to the eye doctor immediately because with my results, there was no way that I was functioning properly. So I texted my dad and told him to come and pick me up from school. So he did. We made an eye doctor appointment, and I went to my physician, and he thought I was making everything up on my eye exam. He didn't have a very good bedside manner, to say the least. I was reading the eye chart, as he wanted me to, and he started to get really upset with me, and he was telling me, this isn't funny. You're never going to be able to drive. You're never going to be able to go to college. You're never going to be able to do this or that. And at that point, I'm 15 years old. I'm, so excited to get my permit and all these new things. And I just started to cry. And I remember he just he stopped talking, and he said that he would be right back. And he ran into one of the offices and made a couple phone calls, and then he came back, and I had to go see a bunch of other doctors and go to children's hospitals until we finally figured out that I have this rare disease. Not a lot of people have it. I think it's 1 in every 13,000 people have Stargardt's disease.
Right.
So what ended up happening was I had to leave the Catholic school that I was attending because they told me that they couldn't provide me with the services that I was going to need as I was losing my sight. So in ninth grade, I lost like half of my sight at first. I had to change schools. There was a lot going on. It was pretty rough.
And then, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to think. um, and then it continued to get worse until it's like 20. I'm 28 now. So it's been a long and windy road, but my visual acuity now is 2400 with my peripherals.
Hmm. Well, so obviously blind people do go to college. So,
Mm-hmm.
how did what was the end result with the rest of your education and you pursuing college and things like that?
Well, I took a little break after high school because it was really hard for me to maneuver through the school system at the time. It was just, everything was hard. Trying to figure out my books, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I had wanted to be a nurse or a doctor or a veterinarian. And I was told that I would never be able to do those things. So I had to completely reframe what it was I wanted to do as a career. And I remember I had to study as soon as I came home from school. I had to study from like 3:30 till 8 o'clock just so I could get C's. And it was because of everything that was going on. It wasn't because I didn't like school, because I loved school before that happened. But so I took a couple years off after high school, and I decided to go back to school to get my undergraduate degree in liberal studies and community services. I'm a junior this year. I'm almost done. I'm so excited to be done because it's been a lot of work, but I'm so happy that I went back to school because it's something I've always wanted to do, regardless of anybody telling me that I can or can't do it. I wanted to prove to myself that I could. And I would actually like to get my master's degree or doctorate degree in psychology and become a licensed therapist.
Good. Absolutely perfect. So why are you a good therapist? If someone finds out that you're a therapist in the future, why should they listen to you?
Why should they listen to me? Well, I feel that I'm a very good listener. I listen to people to understand them rather to, just give a response. I just feel that I'm very empathetic with everything that I have gone through, and I understand that life is very, very hard, but you don't have to stay in that energy of life is terrible. Why did this happen to me? You can always look past that and do better.
Right, exactly. And someone who went back to school when a doctor said that you wouldn't be able to do those things, that person, that therapist is someone that we should listen to. So I agree. I agree. And you seem to have a really great personality for talking to people and listening to people. I mean, you don't know me, I don't know you, but you just basically came out of the blue and came
Mm-hmm.
onto my show without even knowing me. I mean, you don't really know anything about my show apart from maybe a couple things that I've mentioned.
Right.
But outside of that, this is for you. You're just on some guy's show. You don't really know who I am. So that takes a lot of courage, to which I greatly respect you for that. It takes a lot of courage to be on someone else's podcast that you don't even really know. So that's all putting all of that together. I think, yeah, I think that would be a very reasonable, a really good career. Sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I was really nervous coming on here because I'm a bit of a shy person, but
That's understandable.
I really, I believe in what you're doing. There, and I'm sure that, because you've gone through, I'm sure, many struggles as well, but
Yeah.
it's hard, and there's not a lot of resources. There's a lot more than there used to be, absolutely, but there's a lot of misinformation. There's not always a lot of support, and it can feel really
Right.
lonely and overwhelming.
It does. You know what? Everything, guys, I hope you're listening to this episode, because everything that Anastasia just said is 100% accurate. And there's precisely that. The problem is, and I have told my students this before, we have three different problems. There's the problem of information, the problem of misinformation, and the problem of disinformation. And then the fourth problem, the people who talk about the information, misinformation, and disinformation.
Oh, I like that. I like that a
It's
lot.
well, do you know, I love talking about the differences. Do you know what the difference is between information, misinformation, and disinformation?
I could take a guess on the first two, but go ahead and explain it because that's very
In
interesting to me.
information, it would be, for example, a fact. for example, right now, listener at home, you're listening to Aaron's Opinion. That's the name of this